On Christmas Eve, the snow fell heavier than usual, as if the sky itself was grieving for the people who walked beneath it. Among them was a young mother, Claire, clutching her shivering daughter, Emily, as they stood outside the apartment building that no longer belonged to them. Their belongings were stuffed into 2 worn suitcases, their lives condensed into a few bags, and the reality of having nowhere to go settled over them like the bitter cold wind. It was supposed to be a night of warmth, light, and family, yet Claire found herself on the freezing sidewalk, fighting tears, with a child depending on her for strength she barely had left. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that someone was watching her from across the square, someone whose presence would turn this heartbreaking night into the beginning of something extraordinary. Before the story continues, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread if you believe in kindness, second chances, and helping those who need a miracle. As Claire gathered Emily into her arms, trying to shield her from the cold, she replayed the last few months in her mind. She had lost her job after the small bakery she worked at shut down. Her savings slowly drained as she struggled to pay rent and buy food. Despite doing everything she could, cleaning houses, taking night shifts at a cafe, and even selling her jewelry, life kept pushing her down. The eviction notice had been her final blow. She thought the landlord would show mercy because of the season, but instead, she found herself on the street on the one night she desperately needed warmth and safety. All she could think of was keeping her daughter calm, even though she herself was on the verge of collapsing. Emily's soft cries were muffled against her coat as Claire whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep, telling her that everything would be okay, even though every ounce of hope was slipping through her trembling fingers. Across the street, a man with sharp eyes and a heavy heart watched the scene unfold. His name was Michael, a wealthy businessman known by many but understood by few. He was the kind of man people assumed had everything: success, a towering company, and the respect of thousands. But what they didn't know was how empty his life had become. He had lost his parents young and had spent most Christmases alone in silence. Even his achievements felt hollow without anyone to share them with. On that cold Christmas Eve, he had been walking aimlessly through the city, avoiding the festive lights and the sounds of families celebrating, when he noticed Claire and her daughter on the sidewalk. Something about the way she held her child, the desperation in her posture, and the quiet strength she showed even in her brokenness tugged at him in a way he couldn't explain. As he watched the snow settle on her hair and saw her try to cover her daughter with her thin coat, something inside him shifted. He couldn't look away. Claire dragged the suitcases toward the nearest bus shelter, hoping it would shield Emily from the cold. She didn't know where the next bus would go, but anywhere with heat felt like a blessing. Her fingers were numb, her legs trembling, and exhaustion weighed down on her like 1,000 stones. She sat on the cold bench and rocked Emily, humming softly despite the ache in her throat. The world around her was filled with Christmas decorations and the cheerful glow of families passing with gifts and laughter. It made her feel even more alone, like she was watching life from outside a window she could never reach. She wiped her tears quickly, not wanting her daughter to see her break, but Emily noticed anyway and wrapped her little arms around her neck, whispering that she loved her. That small gesture nearly shattered Claire completely. As Michael walked closer, he could hear the soft hum of a mother trying to comfort her child. He felt the familiar sting of loneliness but now mixed with something deeper, empathy. He knew he couldn't simply walk past. Yet he hesitated, aware that approaching a mother alone at night could frighten her. So instead, he approached slowly and sat on the bench across from them, pretending at first to be waiting for a bus. He stole gentle glances at Claire's tired face, noticing the dark circles under her eyes, the way she clutched her daughter protectively, and how her hands trembled not only from the cold but from exhaustion and fear. The sight pulled at him until he could no longer remain silent. He stood and walked to the nearest cafe, bought 2 hot chocolates and a warm meal, and returned, placing the bag gently near her suitcase before stepping back respectfully. Claire flinched in surprise but then looked up at him with guarded eyes. Something in her expression, gratitude mixed with fear, made him want to reassure her, but he simply nodded and stepped away again, giving her space. Claire hesitated, unsure if she should trust the gesture, but Emily's pleading eyes convinced her. As the warmth from the cup seeped into her daughter's hands, Claire felt tears slip down her cheeks again, this time from relief. She looked toward the man, who was still standing at a distance, quietly watching. There was something calm, steady, and sincere about him. Something different from the cold indifference she had encountered earlier from the landlord and others who walked past her situation like it was invisible. She didn't know who he was, but she could sense he wasn't there to harm them. Michael watched her and knew that giving food wasn't enough. He couldn't leave them on the street. Not tonight. Not ever again, if he could help it. So with slow, deliberate steps, he approached once more and offered to help her find a safe place to stay. Claire's eyes widened, uncertainty flickering in them, but exhaustion and her daughter's safety weighed heavier than fear. She agreed cautiously, hoping she wasn't making a mistake. Michael led them to his car, keeping a respectful distance and speaking gently. The warmth inside the car made Emily fall asleep instantly, her head resting on her mother's lap. Claire watched her daughter breathe peacefully for the first time that night and felt a lump rise in her throat. She whispered a soft thank you, her voice barely holding together. Michael drove them to a small, cozy house he kept for guests, a home filled with warmth, blankets, and everything they needed for a safe night. Claire couldn't stop crying as she realized they weren't going to be out in the cold anymore. She tucked Emily into a soft bed and felt her body relax for the first time in weeks. Michael stood quietly at the door, unsure if he should say more, but when Claire turned and looked at him with tearful eyes full of relief, he understood that he had done the right thing. As the days passed, Michael ensured they had food, warmth, and care, yet he never overstepped. Slowly, a fragile but beautiful bond formed between the lonely millionaire and the struggling mother. Claire learned that kindness still existed in a world that had shown her so much hardship. Michael learned that even a broken heart could heal when it found purpose in helping others. Christmas came and went, but the miracle of that night stayed with them forever. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world that compassion still exists. Before the ending, we'd love to know, what would you do if you saw someone in Claire's situation? Comment below. In the end, Claire and Emily found not only shelter but a new beginning, and Michael discovered that sometimes the greatest gifts aren't wrapped in boxes, they're found in the quiet moments when you choose kindness.